There are three mistakes business owners make all the time, especially on social media, that leaves them open to getting sued. And Topher, I'll bet you've done at least one of them this week.
You're probably right. Episode 213 of the Dan Bradbury Podcast. We are remote again until I can get back in the UK, but it's good to see you, even if it's over Zoom. Nonetheless, we've got a lot of news to cover about today, man, because it's been a crazy week in the news. Do you want to launch it up?
Yeah, it's a big week, perfect for this week's theme of the podcast, which is all things legal. Mm-hmm. So this week is the biggest defamation suit in history. So Fox News settles a lawsuit for $1 trillion, $787.5 million, which I believe is the largest defamation suit ever.
Yeah, and you know what? I got to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed. I wish they would have just stuck to it, because I have a feeling that this is now kind of green light media companies to go, what's our budget for lying? What's our budget for creating the narrative, right? Because they know now there really isn't any kind of legal consequence, only financial punitive damages. And that's, I'm disappointed.
100%. And I know you're in the US right now, Topher, but I don't know if the whole phone hacking scandal, which has been around for many, many years, but has heated up again recently in the UK press this week. They were talking about how, I think it was the Sun newspaper, intercepted now King Charles, when he was the prince, and the now Queen consort, Camilla, intercepted some of their phone calls going back into the 90s, right when he was still married to Diana, when she was still alive. And it's almost like they go, oh yeah, we've got a budget now, and we can get away with it, and we'll get fined, and nobody's going to prison, Topher. Nobody's going to prison.
Nope. So, and if it does, it'll be some low-level staffer intern or something that can't afford an attorney and then just has to take the hit for it. It's so frustrating. But
it's like, white-collar financial fraud, like 2008. What was it, like one token banker or maybe two or three went to jail, but really nobody did, and certainly nobody of any significance. Yeah. And people listening to this, Topher, you might be into this topic, or you might be saying, what the hell has this got to do with me? Well, I actually think it's got everything to do with small business owners. These things might, get press and, $750 million being paid in settlement. But Topher, there are three mistakes business owners make all the time, especially on social media, that leaves them open to getting sued. And I'll bet you've done at least one of them this week.
I hate to admit this, but yeah. Let me have them. I'll take my punishment now. But let me ask you this: have you?
Well, I hope not this week, albeit. Right. I did. I have made a mistake last week, Topher. Well, I didn't make a mistake last week. I made a mistake several years ago that resulted in a surprise lawsuit landing on my desk, showing that I too am not immune from these things. But should we talk about the big three?
Actually, no. First, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about not your lawsuit, because I realize that you're in the thick of it right now. But I want to talk about how you're coping with it, right? Because I think one thing that small business owners do face is that when those lawsuits come, it either empowers them to be smarter, wiser, and better, or it just destroys them. And thankfully, I've never had to face that. But frankly, I don't know if I've got the intestinal fortitude to deal with it. And I see that you do. So I'd love for you to share with us a strategy on how you are, how do you keep your head clear in the game, but still have this thing on the side?
Well, I won't claim to be entirely immune. However, this is the power and the value of experience. And if you don't have it firsthand, getting it secondhand via a mentor. I mean, I can tell you, how many stories have you got? I can remember my first major lawsuit, and by major, I mean 7-figure lawsuit. Yeah. And I was getting sued by a publicly traded company over an acquisition, a sale, a disposal of a company. Right. Or they were buying, I was the seller. And ultimately, it fell through. It didn't work out. So I withdrew from the contract, in my view, in line with the terms of the contract. And they disagreed with that conclusion and wanted me to force the sale through. because they declared it to the markets that they were acquiring this company of mine that I was selling. And so consequently, they sued me for consequential losses. And it was a 7-figure sum. And I was in a blind panic over it because it was such an enormous amount of money for me then.
Yeah. Well, it still is. Let's face it. Seven figure is still a significant amount, no doubt about it.
So it would have wiped me out at the time. I mean, this was whatever, let's say circa 10 years ago. It would have wiped me out. If I'd lost, it would have made me bankrupt. So I was in a blind panic. And it was only when I spoke to a mentor of mine who ultimately listened to the facts, and he went, Dan, he said, well, first of all, he said, I'm not a lawyer, which I should say, by the way. I should caveat this whole podcast.
Yeah, the whole podcast. This is just our opinions.
Not lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. This is for entertainment purposes only. Obviously seek appropriate financial and legal advice.
Yeah.
But his opinion was, he's like, Dan, anybody can sue anybody for any reason. And he made a strong case for why they didn't have a case. And I was absolutely right. He said they're being bullies because they know that they've lost. They're in the wrong.
Yeah. So let's get out of the story, though, and let's get into the mindset. Like, so you had a mentor that kind of helped you kind of stay calm. How are you different now? Because you've got this one that you're dealing with, and it's also a whopper. But yet, and I can speak to the behind the scenes. I don't see any difference between the Dan Bradbury this week that's facing these legal challenges right now and the Dan Bradbury last week that didn't have them. So you've obviously got a strategy that allows you to kind of bifurcate this drama over here from your function. And that's kind of what I want to dig in on, is like, what are you doing mentally to stay in the game and still make smart decisions? Because I think that's what happens, right? Is that people get into that stress, then they make bad decisions. It becomes like the snowball effect, and everything topples over.
Right. Well, they think with their emotions. It's funny. Yeah. I think if my partner Laurie was here, she'd say, "Yep, he was grumpy last week, and he's still grumpy this week."
I thought you were going to say she's like, "Yep, Dan just has no emotions."
No. He's a grumpy. Yeah. She probably won't be that nice about it either.
So your strategy is take it out on the family.
No, I'm grumpy regardless. That's the default. That's the baseline emotion. No,
if you're grumpy all the time, nobody knows that you're exactly in a worse mood. Brilliant strategy.
Yeah, no. So, sincerely, I think that there's great comfort in knowing in this particular instance, I've got a strong case. I mean, yeah, you get quirky rules, but you've got to know the rules. So I'd summarize it by saying, be
Which
aware
is one of the three,
rules.
Right? Yeah.
Right, correct. So, like, you've got to know what's going on. So I'm not going to speak to this particular instance, but effectively somebody's claiming something which is just demonstrably untrue. And whilst it's annoying, it's frustrating that there's going to be time, energy, and money to spent on this lawsuit. Effectively, that's should be part of your overall budget for the year. Like, there are problems that happen, whether they be legal, financial, or just, unfortunate things. People get sick, people die, accidents happen, company vehicles get damaged or stolen. Yeah. And there's a hassle factor and a cost factor with fixing it. And so, after the initial shock, very quickly, I was clear that because I play by the rules, not something that I could necessarily say totally whiter than white in my 20s, but because I play by the rules, it's now just categorized to the, hey, this is an annoying thing that has to happen. Okay, and it's going to cost X many pounds. It's in the budget, and it's gonna play through its process. And I've got a good team. So one is know the rules, and secondly is have a good team. Yeah. So now that I've mentally parked, all right, there's this amount of money needs to be partitioned off for financially and legally to doing this. Yeah. I've got a great lawyer on the case, and I've got a great accountant on the case, and you know what? They'll do their job, and ultimately, we'll see in time exactly where it lands. Yeah. But I would be astonished if I lost it. So it's rooted. It's rooted in knowing the rules, understanding the rules of the game. Okay.
All right. So I took you down a rabbit hole, and I apologize. You were about to tell me the three things that people do on a consistent basis, especially online. And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole of how are you keeping it together. So let's jump back and let's go through those first three things. Because I think those are very relevant for small business owners.
100%. I mean, like, if this doesn't scare you, in fact, one thing I'll say before I get into the three, and I am going to not use legal terms, I'm going to use it in plain English. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so, take this at a conceptual level. And I've got the overarching point I was going to make. Oh, yes, the entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. If you're not concerned listening to this, if this isn't hooking your interest, you should be very worried, right?
Right, yeah. But by the way, that might be a fourth one, which is just, it'll never happen to me.
100%. If you've been in business any length of time, you know that this stuff happens. Yeah. I remember after I had my first big 7-figure exit over, I took some time off and I was in Jamaica with my family. And I was on the Sun Lounger, and I was taking a mini retirement, and taking a few months out before I decided what to do next. And a couple of sunbeds owners, so my kids were playing with some other kids by the pool, and the mothers were chatting to each other. And there's a guy, a couple of sunbeds over, that seemed really stressed, who was the father of the kids that were playing with my kids. Yeah. And I ended up getting chatted to him. He's a business owner. He had multi-7-figure revenues, mid-6-figure profits, very healthy, solid balance sheet. And he was exceptionally stressed. Why? Because he'd been issued a cease and desist notice. And he'd never had any legal, even though he was in his mid-30s at the time, I believe. Carl was his name. He'd never had a cease and desist. So it was like very, oh my God, like I'm worried.
Yeah, my world's coming to an end.
Right. And so I said, oh, show it to me. I'll have a look, acting like I was the big I am just because I happened to have this, I've sold this company. I know all the answers. But I had some legal experience, and I looked at it and I went, nah, this is bullshit. Like, you've got no case to answer. Get legal advice, but blah, blah, blah. But you should go back in with this. Fast forward 3-4 months, and it was exactly that. The person.
Oh, you kept in touch with him.
Yeah. He ended up becoming a client. But the person was on a fishing expedition, so he ended up becoming friends with the guy that took legal action against him. And the guy was basically an older guy, wealthy, retired, and sometimes he just liked throwing his weight around a little bit. And they ended up doing a JV together because they were competitive products, and he decided that he was going to go after this guy on the basis that he was infringing on his copyright, which he wasn't.
Right. So I took you down a rabbit hole, and then I got back onto the 3 things that people do, and then you took yourself on a rabbit hole and went down to this. But I have a feeling it's going to lead back to
it's going to come back. So I was just trying to scare, I suppose, people listening into going saying, you know what, you need to get educated on this stuff because it will bite you in the ass at some point. So the common, so it's not limited to these 3, but the most common 3 are blatantly lying about your competition or misrepresenting your competition, right, and how you compare, etc. That's number 1. Number 2 is speaking badly about your competition or somebody who has a mouthpiece.
Like talking shit to somebody who has a wide distribution and might spread it.
Right. An influencer. Right? Ultimately, you've got to be careful. Got to be careful what you say, and finally, stating your opinion as a fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
By the way, number 2, that's the whole legal case with Fox, isn't it? Right. So much shit was being said privately to people in confidence that it wouldn't get out, and they had a big mouthpiece, and they just started sharing it with everybody, and kind of revealed that they knew all along it was a lie. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. So I mean, you can categorize this broadly speaking just under the label defamation, which is what this Fox suit is, but it's about making false statements or publication. So that's where the defamatory statement is publicized or via a third party. Yeah. And then ultimately, what caused them to lose money is damages. They're showing the damages that have been done. And you don't need to be a lawyer to understand it at a conceptual level. It's very, very simple, Topher. So if they're the 3 things, what does that mean? Yeah. Succinctly, only publish facts. Make sure you get explicit permission if you're using images, if you're using quotes, if you're using referencing somebody else's content, get explicit permission. Otherwise, you might end up on a copyright infringement being brought against you. And ultimately, would be knowing exactly what the advertising rules are. It never ceases to amaze me, Topher. When
we have the AMA over here, the American Marketing Association. But you're talking about like broadcasting rules.
In the UK, it's called the Advertising Standards Authority.
Okay.
Right. And they've got rules. They've kind of got 5 key rules that most people aren't aware of, and they're surprised when they put some big claim. I mean, we spoke about it a few weeks ago on this podcast when we were speaking about Huel. Right, and the ads had to get taken down, but ultimately the rules are truthfulness, decency, social responsibility, identification, and comparisons. Right? I mean, you read this.
There's no way an American news channel could even operate in the UK if they actually followed those 5 things. So it's like none of them follow that.
Right. Look, but if you read the rules. I know there's always a degree of subjective. They say it's, not truthful. You'd argue that it is. Or, the definition of social responsibility is advertisements must not exploit the vulnerability of consumers and cause harm, either directly or indirectly, right? So that's basically includes promoting unhealthy products, targeting children, or encouraging dangerous behavior.
By the way, that is a perfect segue into the fail of the week.
Fail of the week this week, Elizabeth Holmes how do you pronounce coming in? Theranos.
Theranos, I think.
Theranos, Theranos, I think it is. But remember, going back, 6, 7, 8 years, this lady was being lauded as the youngest ever self-made billionaire.
Yep.
Right? Self-made billionaire because of the truly innovative product that the company had developed to help detect disease from.
I think it was cancer. It was cancer detection through blood tests, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was a variety of diseases, but obviously everyone was getting excited about the cancer from a single pinprick blood test. But the problem was it was ultimately fraudulent, and there were fraudulent claims, and she's been sentenced, or her and a co-conspirator have been sentenced to a decade or more than a decade each in prison. Right?
Let me 2 questions for you on this. One, there are entrepreneurs who have done far worse than her and never did any jail time. So my question is, do you think is this and the people that I'm specifically referring to would probably be like, I don't know, old white men, right? I'm wondering, do you think that there is any aspect of sexism in the system here? Like they finally got a female entrepreneur and they can kind of shut her up. Do you think there's any validity to that? I don't know, but man, it just seems like there's been people that have done a lot worse. I mean, what did she do? She made some false statements. If I were to summarize it, she was faking it till she could make it, which I hate that phrase in the self-help world, by the way, for this exact purpose. But I'm wondering if there's any level of sexism going on in that one. And then the other thing that just burns my ass about it is the fact that there's just too many people that think they can fake it till they make it. That is just, I think it's one of the most dangerous beliefs that entrepreneurs could have.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, Topher, as in, on the one hand, I hate going to my default grumpy old man stereotype. I hate today's modern world and social media age, and everybody says whatever they want. Yeah. And there definitely can be a downside of a lot of those things. But part of it is it's far easier than ever to have a voice, which means that, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was easier for companies to take advantage of customers, and there was not much you could do about it. Whereas now, people are able to raise awareness for things. So I'm not going to speak specifically to your sexism comment or the old white men getting away with it. I do think a lot of white.
So that means you think it's true.
No. It means that I think most white collar crime goes unpunished, and it's clearly been demonstrated now. Unfortunately, I do think the criminal justice system is chronically underfunded, and I think I don't think. I think in the UK, at least, which I speak for, I don't think there's that much corruption going on in the legal system. I don't have any real basis for that other than I believe the court's doing its job. But the fact is, if you can't afford decent representation, the legal aid system is beyond a joke. So therefore, people with money can afford better representation, which means that they've got a greater chance of making a case to argue why they should stay. By the way, Elizabeth Holmes, just today, there's a new news article. She's managed to push back, put in another appeal, which has kept her free for at least another month. Now, ultimately, I think she's going to go to prison, but you never know. Maybe this appeal will get heard and she won't go to prison at all. I think, Topher, though, coming back full circle on the whole social media awareness thing, I think that I can complain about people making noises, but actually I think more people are being held to account, and that will result in more convictions. I mean, it's a completely different topic. Me too, and Harvey Weinstein, and like people getting convicted. It's better than it was. I'm not saying there's not a million miles to go, but I think it feels like there's greater accountability. Is my So
that'll be the kind of the bellwether test, right? Is if we see more corporate executives going down for making false claims, maybe it's not sexism, but if the next big case is the men are just walking away.
Right. I mean, to quote, paraphrase Warren Buffett, got to shoehorn him in somewhere. He's basically spoke for much stricter penalties, financial penalties, and convictions and jail time for CEOs of big corporations that absolutely, do over investors, and much stricter rules. He believes would tend towards a much more integrous, healthier working environment, and I'm inclined to agree with the big man.
All right, my friend. Well, let's do this. Let's shift to something a little bit more positive. Let's talk about what promotion of the week, which I'm really excited about, which is the Ultimate Entrepreneur, the third annual Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition coming up June 20th and 21st this year at Warwick Conferences. I'm excited about this one. I think we've made this event bigger and better than the previous two. What are your thoughts?
Well, I love it, and I especially love the twist that we've put on it this year.
What you loved most was the ad.
No, I hated the ad. I think
should we put the ad in the podcast? This is the promotion of the week. Maybe this is where we should put the ad.
Okay, so we're only going to put the podcast in if I can make the disclaimer that I do not endorse this ad. I think it is ridiculous. It is over the top. It is preposterous, and I want nothing to do with it except the fact it's promoting my Ultimate Entrepreneur competition. But I'll leave it to the listeners to judge.
Roll the tape.
Well, if you need to communicate what the changes are, why don't I just run like an ad? I'll make a commercial.
No. We've been there, done this, and I think my definition.
When have I ever let you down? I got you, boo.
Listen, I'm. If you're gonna get me to do this, I'm not having any of this fucking American hypey bullshit.
I don't need his advice. I got this.
Are you ready? This June, Dan Bradbury is going to turn Warwick conferences into a giant mud pit. That's right, the third annual Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition.
Business Breakthrough Edition!
Are you ready to battle? Go head-to-head with 6 other badass entrepreneurs. 6 people enter. Only one will leave in the most amazing, action-packed, death-defying competition ever created for business owners. A no-holds-bar, no rules. Except the few rules we do have, which are totally reasonable. Over £2 million in prizes.
The evidence pounds!
One lucky contestant will become a multi-millionaire.
Exchange rates rock!
Register now for the Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition.
Business Breakthrough Edition! Yeah!
I don't know what your problem is. To me, I think I nailed that ad. I think it might be one of my best.
Okay. The one thing that was missing just slightly, Topher, was let's talk about what's different. Because some of the people listening to this podcast for a length of time know that normally like, hey, let's talk about, rags to riches success story. And we've had some amazing entrepreneurs in the past that have gone from, start up to 8-figure revenues, 7-figure profits. Rob Stone was talking about how he did that in a 4-year period last year.
Yeah.
So we've had some truly tremendous success stories, but it's a little bit different this year. But you explain it better than I do. What's the twist that we put on the competition?
We put a couple of twists in there. Number one, we've reduced the amount of finalists that will get on stage from, I think it was 10 down to 6. And then we've reduced the amount of time that they get to speak to make sure that they stay on track and focus and don't just kind of meander around, because ultimately the competition is existing inside your CEO Mastermind. And those people are paid customers that are coming to get great value and great information. And they may not want to sit and listen to stories all the time. So we've shifted it to call it the Business Breakthrough Edition, where each contestant has to share one strategy that they've used in their business to scale their company up in whatever way, whether it be more profit, more leads, more time, greater employee morale, anything. I mean, they can get as creative as they want, but then convert that and show how all other entrepreneurs in the room can actually apply that same strategy to their businesses. So I think it's going to become way more relevant this year, because last year I noticed it almost, I think what happened last year is they saw who won the first year, Georgia Kirk. And they realized, she had a great emotional component, a great emotional story. So then everybody on the second year just went, I'm going to just tell my rags to riches story, my emotional component. And it was a little light on the content. So we're switching this over and we're reducing it to 6. And instead of just one prize for the grand prize winner, you got a first, second, and third place. So if there's 6 finalists, they got a 50-50 chance of winning. And everyone's walking away with a professionally edited video covering their strategies that they can use for whatever marketing purposes they want. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Topher, all the things you said, I mean, hopefully people get the link in the show notes if they want to apply. But I actually just want to emphasize, just from a content perspective, you're going to have 6 finalists that have absolutely crushed it, sharing specific strategies, trying to win the audience vote on some of the power, the effectiveness of those strategies. So you in the audience can go, wow, I see that, I hear it, I can apply that in my business to have more rapid growth, increase net profit margins, and or free myself up from the company, realize or raise the value of my company for an exit. So I think it's going to be good as gold.
Yeah, and that's only one segment inside the entire mastermind program. So we should do like a featured video or something talking about all of the different segments that'll come up. So if anybody's interested, they could come in. If they're not a client already and can't attend as a customer, they could come in and just have the mastermind experience and enjoy it and just see what it's all about. So yeah, we'll put that in here.
All right, shake it off, Topher. Let's get to the hero of the week. So the hero of the week this week, I wouldn't have ever thought it on a business podcast, but the hero of the week is Taylor Swift.
Shake it off.
Oh dear God! Honestly, I made the pun, but anyway, I'm just going to move on. But she actually absolutely deserves this.
Hell yes, she does.
For legal acumen. Check this out. So on Business Insider, they broke an article fairly recently about how Taylor Swift was offered a $100 million sponsorship deal, which she did not sign. Do you know who the $100 million sponsorship deal was with, Topher?
FTX, my friend. Our favorite fail of the week, who's been on it like 2 or 3 times with the Sam Bankman-Fried or something.
Bankman-Fried, yeah. Sam Bankman-Fried. So ultimately, they wanted her sponsorship. Yep. They wanted her to endorse FTX, the exchange, but she was the only one that asked an intelligent question. So actually, Toby, it's not so much about Taylor Swift, even though she did avoid it, which means she's not getting sued, but there is a class action lawsuit going on against several FTX promoters, because FTX went, right, how do we get celebrity endorsers? People like Shaquille O'Neal, Tom Brady, right? Mm-hmm. So like heavyweight sports stars, music stars are getting sued, right? And the plaintiffs, Topher, are suing them for over $5 billion. Right, $5 billion. But Taylor Swift, she was. Let me see if I can find the question here. Oh yeah, so
it was her father.
Well, yeah, it's because her father is a attorney, right? And
I think, but he also have some background in financial services. Like I think at one point in time he did financial planning or something. And so
he used to work for Merrill Lynch. So actually, he wasn't a lawyer. He used to work for Merrill Lynch. So she asked a simple but powerful question, which is, can you tell me that these, i.e. the crypto market, they're not unregistered securities? So when they were doing due diligence or discovery, she asked that question. And because they weren't able to confirm that, ultimately they declined to do it. And this is brilliant, because somebody, if you're listening to this right now going, what the hell is this to do with me? I kind of go, if you are endorsing something, if you're recommending a product or service and it goes bad, you can get sued. And you know what I was saying earlier? Like, there's a lot more drama in the world, but there's more accountability.
Yeah.
You know what?
By the way, this shows up when small business owners do joint venture marketing, right? And they just think, well, if I'm representing this other companies and endorsing it, they don't really sit there and go, okay, what's the legal ramifications of me saying, oh, we're working with these people, right? That's powerful. Ooh.
Right, to counter.
Another great lesson directly for small business owners. Think about this, Dan. I want you to put yourself in Taylor Swift's shoes. She had $100 million paycheck that she could have done with less than an hour's worth of work. $100 million sitting there ready for her to take. And one person, happened to be her father, but it could have been anybody, said, don't do this deal. And she listened to them. How many times do small business owners just think, oh, my gut's telling me this is good. I know somebody's saying don't worry about it, or they're giving me some warning signs, but my gut tells me this will be good. I'll tell you what, I'm wondering how many of those other celebrities maybe actually did have somebody say, I wouldn't touch this one. And they're like, it's all right. And they just ignored them, right? Listen to the people that you hire.
Right. It's a very fine line to balance. But I mean, I'll say allegedly Taylor Swift's net worth is kind of $400-500 million allegedly. So this one deal is a quarter of a net worth. Right,
that's no small deal. Man.
Correct. So for people listening to this going, oh well, she's got all the money she needs. I kind of go, no, it's just a different number of zeros. Yeah. Like, you'll have opportunity to JV, and I'm not saying don't do anything. That's the fine line. It's where do you, because if you listen to lawyers all the time on every item, you'll never get any deal done. Right? You'll never get any deal done. But where she was good is she asked the smart questions. Yeah. She don't just take it at face value. Take the check. She was getting advice. She listened to the advice and ultimately made her own judgment call. And she obviously wasn't happy with what came out of the due diligence. Yeah. Okay, so she didn't do it, and she's now not on the wrong end of a $5 billion lawsuit. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, awesome. You like her, or you don't like her music. You got to respect her business acumen. That's for sure. All right, let's move on to the book of the week, my friend.
So the book of the week this week, Tova, is an absolute cracker. It's new out, and I found it by coincidence because I recently went on holiday, and when I was at the airport, it caught my attention. And the book is called TAXTOPIA: How I Discovered the Injustices, Scams, and Guilty Secrets of the Tax Evasion Game. And it's the author is called The Rebel Accountant. So for people that have read things like Confessions of an A&E Doctor and The Secret Magistrate and The Secret
Confessions
Barrister.
of an Economic Hitman. Remember that one?
Oh. Yeah, I do. That was a great book. Yeah. So it's very similar. Somebody talking about the financial and legal ramifications and the games that people play. But it doesn't only show where people are underhanded and get away with it, but also where they're underhanded and get caught and go to prison. And it's, so for my guilty pleasure is kind of financial crime, true stories, like the collapse of Enron, stuff like that. Yeah. But this book is an absolute slam dunk, entertaining and funny as well. Like very British, sarcastic humor. And it goes deep into government, tax. And it doesn't sound sexy, but I could see this being made into a film, Cause
it almost kind of sounds like a little bit of like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of a thing, right? Where it's behind the scenes. Yeah.
That's it. The Panama Papers, etc. So TAXTOPIA, check it out.
Excellent. All right, cool. Let's move it on to the quote of the week and wrap this thing up.
Quote of the week this week is by Edmund Burke, who said, "It is not what a lawyer tells me I may do, but what humanity, reason, and justice tell me I ought to do."
Oh,
right? And I love this quote
that.
because, yes, you need lawyers and contracts and all that kind of stuff, but actually, humanity, reason, and just good old-fashioned common sense will save the need for as much. So, Topher, looping back to the start when you said, why am I not more stressed with this significant lawsuit, legal action that I'm facing right now? And the answer is because, common sense. I've behaved appropriately in the past, and just because somebody wants to take a case, ultimately, justice will be served if you're doing the right things. You've got less problems occur to begin with.
Yeah, it's so true, man. Just common sense and decency will keep you out of a lot of problems for sure. Yeah, well said, my friend.
All right, that's it for this week. So as always, if you want a better business, if you want better results, you need to become a better business owner. See you next time.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.